The president specifically asked me, and his gaggle of crackpot lawyers asked me to literally reject votes, which would have resulted in the issue being turned over to the House of Representatives, and literally chaos would have ensued.
Former Vice President Mike Pence reacting to the latest indictment against his old boss, former President Trump. This, a day before Trump is set to be arraigned for attempting to overturn the 2020 election. Joining me now is Democratic California congressional candidate Will Rollins. You helped to prosecute one of the January 6th rioters, a Beverly Hills cosmetologist. We'll talk more about that in a moment. Good to see you. Thanks for coming in.
You too. Thanks for having me.
Let's start with the big argument here. A lot of folks on the right are saying, look, it may not have been great that Donald Trump was lying over and over and over again, but he's got a free speech right to do that. That's not a crime. What do you say to that?
Well, as the grand jury alleged, there's a difference between his right to make false statements about the election and fraud. And that's where you cross into the line of criminality. And that's actually alleged in the indictment. They make it pretty clear that he had the right to go out and lie to the American people again and again and again. But if you start to conspire to submit false documents to the federal government, like anybody who's committing bank fraud, you aren't above the law. And he's committing a form of fraud against the United States when he crosses into that territory of creating false documents.
And those false documents would be false electors. These were people that they wanted Mike Pence to basically say, yeah, we're going with them instead of the actual electors, which would mean a different result. We just heard from Mike Pence. He's mentioned over and over again in this indictment. What do you make of his role in all this?
Look, this is probably a funny thing to say for a Democratic House candidate, but I think the American people deserve to give a lot of credit to people like Mike Pence and the other Republicans who supported Donald Trump, but who were later asked to violate the Constitution, said no, and upheld their oaths of office. And there are a lot of Republicans mentioned throughout the indictment at the state level and the federal level. His Director of National Intelligence, Attorney General Barr, people who he made life-changing appointments for, came back to him when he asked them to commit crimes and said no.
Mike Pence, according to the indictment, Trump said to him, quote, "You're too honest." But do you think Mike Pence is the key witness in this whole thing?
He's going to be one of them, no doubt. I think also the national security officials who briefed him a few days before January 6th, to which he responded, "We'll leave this for the next guy." Very clear he knew he lost the election when he's being briefed on those national security issues.
Let's talk about your experience in all this, because you prosecuted a Beverly Hills cosmetologist who was there on January 6th. What were the lessons learned from that experience?
Look, I mean, it is destructive to send that kind of a lie out into the public. And there were a lot of people who listened to his call to go to the U.S. Capitol, including people like Gina Bisognano, who stood on the steps with a bullhorn calling for angry patriots to bring in their gas masks and weapons and to try to stop the peaceful transfer of power for the first time in our country's history. So I think the lesson is that accountability for January 6th doesn't stop with people like her. In this case, it goes all the way to the top.
Although, of course, his defenders would say he wasn't in there doing all that sort of stuff. That's what they would say, although the indictment makes it a different allegation in terms of his role for the whole thing. Let's talk about how this impacts the race. It impacts your race. You're running against Ken Calvert, an incumbent Republican who's been representing the district for a very long time. If Donald Trump is the nominee for Republicans, what does that mean for close California races like yours?
I think we're going to get a lot of Republican votes. And I was really proud in the last election to have the support from the former Assembly Republican leader in California, the former elected Republican sheriff in Riverside County, both of whom believe in the rule of law and our democracy. And when they see someone like Ken Calvert get on TV or make statements about the weaponization of the Justice Department, political persecution, the FBI being infiltrated by rot, there are a lot of people across party lines who understandably are disturbed by those statements and want somebody in office who is going to defend the Constitution of the United States.
Donald Trump lost California by 30 points, and we have seen in the past that California voters are not big fans of him, and this could be really problematic for Republicans in close districts if he's the nominee. We'll see if he's the nominee. We'll see about his future. He's going to be arraigned tomorrow at 1 o'clock our time. Will Rollins, thanks so much for coming in and sharing your views. We appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.